I think we are live officially right now. All right. Okay, just want to make sure it's going all the way through. Yeah. All right. Shalom, everyone. I'm Brother Doug. To all of our brothers and sisters out there from the Awakened by Yahuwah Assembly, we want to say joyful new moon. We hope you're having a very joyous and glad new moon out there. Today is the first day of the new month. We here at the fellowship, we keep the first sliver calendar. So literally it started last night. The new moon started last night. So we're pretty much at the second half of the new moon day, you could say. So, and I figure, it's fitting for us to blow the trumpet on the record here to fully celebrate it here. So we hope that you guys are having a great one out there. And if you don't know much about the new moon, feel free to reach out to this ministry. Feel free to reach out to those of us on Facebook. I'm pretty sure any of my sisters or brothers in this fellowship would refer you to me. And some of us here that know a decent bit about the new moon and scriptures to give, why we recognize it, why we don't think it's just a day to mark on the calendar, but a day that is supposed to be a day for gathering together, a day we are commanded to blow the trumpet on appointed times as these. So what we're going to do today on the new moon, we are going to be going through a study that we started last Sabbath evening. We're going to be going into the differences in the book of Genesis, Bereshit. So we're going to be looking at the two texts of the LXX, which is Roman numeral for the 70, translation of the 70, aka the Septuagint, which was the Bible of Messiah and his apostles, by the way. That was their Tanakh, their Old Testament. The Masoretic text is what's known today as the traditional text, the Masor, Hebrew word Masor meaning tradition. Okay, so it was the traditional Old Testament of Rabbinic Judaism that is authoritative in Rabbinic Judaism. So a little short history of those two texts, the way the Masoretic text got in our Bibles instead of the Septuagint. Pretty much the Protestant reformers, when they fled from the Vatican, they falsely trusted in Judaism for the Old Testament. That's what happened. So all of our modern Christian Bibles today are based for the most part off of the Masoretic text. You might have a modern Bible that at least consults maybe 10-20% with the Septuagint, like the NIV, the NLT, ESV, but most of them, 80% of the time, are consulting with the Masoretic for the most part, due to the tradition of the Protestant Reformation. So the only Christian groups today you will see using this text is the Church of the Greek Orthodox. They have an all Greek Bible, Greek Old Testament, New Testament based. So Septuagint Old Testament, Byzantine majority text, New Testament. And same thing, I believe, with the Egyptian Orthodox. They're known as the Coptics. So if you have any friends that are Egyptian Orthodox, they probably would have already been raised with a Septuagint Old Testament, just FYI. So, but anyway, so that's a little bit of history of that. The main thing to remember, I'm not trying to give you too much information at once, but the main thing to remember is that LXX was the Old Testament of the disciples. That was what they used. A little bit of history of that is that it was petitioned by Ptolemy Philadelphus II. He was the son of one of the four horns of Alexander. So, the prophecy in Daniel talks about, the he-goat defeats, what is it, Mom? The he-goat versus the ram?
Yes.
So the he-goat defeats the ram, right? So Alexander defeats, historically, we know that was fulfilled when Alexander defeated Darius of the Medes and the Persians. Yes. Then through Alexander, prophecy said that Daniel spoke into existence, or I shouldn't say he spoke into existence, Yahuwah spoke into existence through Daniel, that you would have 4 horns come from that he-goat. So 4 commanders came from Alexander's line in his empire. One of the 4 horns was Ptolemy Philadelphus the First. His son, the Ptolemy Philadelphus II of Ptolemy Egypt, the Greek Empire in Egypt at that time in 300 BC, petitioned the Septuagint. You can look this up for yourself. Don't believe what I'm saying, but you can test what I'm saying, research it for yourself, and you'll find out that that's the truth, is that historically it's a fact that he's the reason we have the Septuagint today. Ptolemy Philadelphus commissioned the Septuagint to be written. He asked 70 Hebrew, mind you, Judean, not just Judean, but the legend says one from each of the 12 tribes. So 70 scribes from the 12 tribes of Israel who were ethnically Hebrew by blood. He asked them to translate, at that time, Paleo-Hebrew Old Testament, mind you, not modern Hebrew, Paleo-Hebrew Old Testament into Koine Greek. So that's the story of the Septuagint. So that's why you'll see, even in the Strong's Concordance, those are our brothers and sisters that use the concordances. Sometimes when you're looking at definitions of words, when you're trying to match the Greek to the Hebrew equivalent, it's not going to have the same definition. The reason is that Greek word is based on a Paleo-Hebrew word. It's not based on a Yiddish word. So bear in mind that your modern Hebrew Old Testaments that are in your Bibles, a lot of these words, you got to understand with the Strongs, James Strong didn't have much to work with as far as the Old Testament. He had to work with a Masoretic, modern Yiddish, distorted Hebrew even with the concordance. So it's not going to be perfect when you're looking at the Yiddish words. There is certain vowel points. The vowel points play into changing the meanings of words, and that's why sometimes you got to look at the root word. So anyway, not trying to give you too much at once, but that's why the history of this is important. The Septuagint is the closest we have today to the original Paleo-Hebrew, ancient Paleo-Hebrew, original Torah that Moshe would have penned. So that Moses would have penned. So anyway, so we went through last time Genesis 2 to 11. I really recommend you guys, when we're doing continuation studies, feel free to ask me for links to the part 1, just so you guys get a bigger context of certain things. So just so you're not lost in the part 2, I would really recommend going to part 1. It is on my channel right now. Differences in the Book of Genesis, part 1. It is up there, uploaded. Feel free to ask for it. I'll give you guys the link. But it would help you guys follow what we're talking about and what we're going to be talking about here. So, all right. So we're going to start here. I believe, Mom, we left off at what? Genesis 11:24, I think, was the last one. I know we got into 11 last time. We got somewhere around here.
My marker was cut off on the page that has 16 and 17 on it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that's where my marker was.
I don't think so. We didn't go that far.
Okay, no problem.
You might have had your marker there because we went into that on the Sabbath. On Sabbath day.
I'll bet you're right.
We definitely didn't go that far. I know that. All right, so I'm assuming we're at Genesis 11:25 at this point. So this is going to be the last of the genealogies here, differences. So if you got a physical Bible, open it up to Genesis 11:25. I'm going to show you guys some interesting differences here. Okay, so Genesis 11:25 in the Masoretic, it has the age of 119. Most of your Bibles will say 119. The Septuagint says 125. You okay, Mom?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. All right. So Genesis 11:25 or 11:29. Let me see here. Genesis 11. Okay, so 11. I believe it's 11 verse 25. I just mentioned. So you're going to see a huge difference here.
19. Or 18, babe.
Yeah. Genesis 11:25 has 119 for the Masoretic, 125 for the Septuagint, and this is referring to Terah. the patriarch Terah, who is the son of Nahor, and actually it's talking about Nahor being 125. Let me correct myself. So yeah, so Nahor lived 125 years after begetting Terah and begot sons and daughters, and he died. Now, again, we discussed this last time. The age differences seem to link to the Masoretic rabbinical scribes trying to claim Shem was Melchizedek and all that nonsense, and that Yahusha's not Melchizedek, but Shem is. So the reason of the differences in the ages you'll see in Genesis 5 all the way to here with the genealogies really has a bias to them. For the Masoretic part, they want to make you think that Shem lived long enough to meet Abraham, which is unrealistic in my opinion, extremely unrealistic. But anyway, you can read that in rabbinical literature for yourselves. You can look it up on encyclopedia, not in Jewish encyclopedia.com talks about it, that it's in the Mishnah and all that, that they want to claim Shem is Melchizedek. Multiple reasons Shem can't be Melchizedek. You can read it for yourself. We mentioned it last time. Hebrews 7, 1-3 says Melchizedek had no father and mother, had no genealogy, even it says in the Greek. Okay, so that means you got to rule Shem out of there. He can't be Melchizedek. So anyway, moving on. So now we're going to go to Genesis 15 now. So now we're working our way up to 15 now. So the Masoretic text adds Adonai in this verse. So this is, we're about to get to the part of the Adonais in here. Now, just to kind of give you guys a background why it matters that Adonai is added there. You can do this for yourself, and I'm even going to start leaving, like I used to leave in our older comparison studies, these links to these resources that prove that Adonai goes back to the Greek god Adonis, which was another Baal that the Israelites pretty much started idolizing and worshiping. Baal Nimrod was known by many different names in many cultures. You can say our late brother Rob Skiba, he coined the phrase "the man of many names." He really was the man of many names. Adonis, Perseus. What else you got? Dionysus was a type of a Baal. I mean, you can go through the whole list of the mythologies. You had many, many names. You had 72 nations from the Tower of Babel, after the Tower of Babel, so 72 different languages. So it's not that hard to believe that Adonai goes back to Adonis, and Adonis was a form of Baal in the Greek religion. So anyway, so that's why I believe Adonai should not be there in the text. So anyway, plus the fact the majority of the time, the Septuagint will never ever have, usually will never have master before Yahuwah. Now this time it seems like they have master and then Yahuwah here, but the majority of the time it's not really there. It will just have one kurios, like one all caps Lord usually. So anytime you see your English Bibles, FYI, and I think they say this in every preface. Please correct me, sisters or brothers, if I'm wrong, but they say this in every preface of every Bible. Whenever it's a lowercase Lord, and then it has a all caps God, okay, that all caps there is indicating that that's Yahuwah there. With the lowercase Lord here, all in small capital rest lowercase, this is indicating the H136 in the Strong's Concordance, which would be Adon or Adonai. So again, this is the difference with the Masoretic too. They honored this term Adonai as a placeholder for the Father's name sometimes, or as a title before the Father's name. And it's been added in there a bunch of times. When doing this study, I actually found out there, just in the book of Genesis alone, this word has been added 11 times, where the Septuagint does not have the equivalent in Greek for Adonai. I know the claim is that kurios is equivalent to Adonai, but I respectfully disagree. Kurios is actually the substitution for the Father's name. Because most of the time when you see kurios in a Septuagint, if the translator is being honest, he puts it in all caps Lord almost every time. So no, the kurios is not equivalent to Adon or Adonai at all. So anyway, so I just wanted to clarify that up. Genesis 15 verse 6, the Masoretic text I would have to side with here has Yahuwah. Septuagint has Elohim. The reason I know that is because in the Greek it has theos instead of kurios. So that's the reason I know that. Going on to verse 7 in Genesis 15, LXX has the Elohim. Masoretic text has Yahuwah, so I personally prefer the Masoretic text version of this verse here. Genesis 15 verse 8, LXX has Master Yahuwah. Masoretic text again adds Adon or Adonai in front of Yahuwah's name. Genesis 15 verse 17, Masoretic text omits the word flame. So now we're going to look here how this omission right here in verse 17 of Genesis 15, how that makes a difference here. So let's go to Genesis 15, 17. Let's see. Actually, that's the wrong tab there. So I have to scroll down here. Okay, so Genesis 15, 17. And when the sun was about to set, there was a flame, and behold, a smoking furnace, and lamps of fire which passed between these divided pieces. The reason I think it's important that it's there in the Septuagint is showing that Yahuwah is the flame. In a way, it's kind of showing that, you know, we see later on in scripture, Yahuwah is a consuming fire. Yahushua is a consuming fire. So I wonder if the point of to omit this word flame or was a flame was a way to take away Yahushua from the text. That's the only thing I could take from that, why they would even want to do that, to omit that out of there. Because we know that Yahushua is a consuming fire. Out of his mouth comes flames of fire when he's going to destroy the beast, right? So that could be a bias by the rabbinic scribes that are known as the Masoretes. Another weird difference we're going to come about here is verse 21 of Genesis 15, where the Masoretic text omits the word Hivites. Very weird. So it's omitting one of the Nephilim tribes for whatever logical reason they would want to do that. I've heard like straw man arguments. They're trying to say, well, the Hivites, by the time Moses wrote Genesis, that the Hivites are dead. If first of all, then we should find confirmation of that later on in the Torah. We should find somewhere, you know, later on in the Torah that would expound that, okay, the Hivites were already dead when they got into the land of Canaan, or they were already wiped out. There's no mention of that in the text. So there's no reason to leave that out. I understand the argument that people put forth to you know, that try to defend the Masoretic, but the point is that when he's writing Genesis, Yahuwah is giving him the narrative from way back when, you know. So anyway, so we're gonna go here. I think we're gonna go now next to Genesis 16, 4 and 5. Hey mom, can you turn that back on?
Absolutely.
It's getting a little warm in here.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so Genesis 16, 4 to 5. LXX says dishonored before her. Masoretic text says despised in her eyes. So now we're going to go to Genesis 16, 4 to 5. And we're going to look at that. All right, so Genesis 16, 4 to 5. Okay. Okay, so the Masoretic would say he went into Hagar and she conceived, and when she saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress. Interesting. So the ESV kind of seems to agree with the LXX. So from what I've seen in the regular Masoretic text, it will sometimes even try to portray that the one that's looking at her with contempt is Sarah, but if you actually read in context, it's actually Hagar looking in contempt at Sarah, her mistress. So, because it says when she conceives, Hagar conceived, when she saw that she had conceived, she looked with, oh, no, never mind. No, it is portraying Sarah as the evil one. Okay, so Sarah looked at her with contempt. Now the Septuagint says he went into Hagar, she conceived, and saw that she was with child, and her mistress was dishonored before her. So there's a little difference in the wording. It's kind of portraying a different story. It's like, who's in the wrong? Is it Hagar or Sarah? And the Masoretic seems to make it look like Sarah's vindictive for no reason. She told Abraham to do this, to go into her mistress, and now she's having second thoughts, versus the Septuagint, which shows that Hagar is looking at Sarah with contempt after she herself conceived. Now she's looking with, now Sarah's being dishonored before her, which to me makes 10 times more sense as you read the rest of the chapter, in my opinion. The whole flow of the chapter is that it seems like there's something that Hagar did to instigate, enmity between her and Sarah. So Hagar and Sarah seems to have enmity once Hagar conceived. So anyway, Genesis 16:13 has Yahuwah Elohim. Masoretic text again just has Yahuwah, and we kind of went over this the first time, but we have some new guests on and maybe listeners and viewers. So whenever in your Bibles it has Yahuwah Elohim, which the substitution for that obviously is LORD, and then it will follow with GOD. Whenever it has Yahuwah Elohim compounded together, that's referring to Yahusha pre-incarnate. Just wanted to let you guys know. That's specifically referring to the person of the Messiah pre-incarnate. So I don't find it surprising that the Masoretic text only has Yahuwah in that verse in Genesis 16:13. So they would want to omit Elohim and take away any idea that the Son, Yahusha, is pre-incarnate and that he's one with the Father and all that. Okay, so moving on to Genesis 17 here. All right, so Genesis 17 verse 1 has Yahuwah has your Elohim in the Septuagint. Masoretic text has Al Shaddai. What's interesting is that in the Septuagint, it never, ever, ever has Al Shaddai there, or a Greek form of Al Shaddai. Usually it takes the meaning, which the meaning, according to the Septuagint, is your mighty one, or your deity, or your, Alua, your Elohim. So rarely does it ever use Al Shaddai or a Greek rendering of Al Shaddai in the text. We only see a rendering of Al Shaddai pre-Masoretic with the Targums. Those are the only other manuscripts out there that have the name Al Shaddai in there. And many translators, in my opinion, get it wrong, the meaning of Al Shaddai wrong, and they try to put Al Shaddai in the New Testament, which there is no proof Al Shaddai was ever used in the New Testament whatsoever, other than the fact that they assume the Greek Elohim Almighty is equivalent to Al Shaddai, which is incorrect. And the Septuagint proves that it's incorrect. So the actual definition of Al Shaddai, from what I've studied into, actually is the all-sufficient one, which you see in the Targums. Like in that exact verse in the Aramaic Targums, it would say the all-sufficient one. So that's the only manuscript I've seen that title Al Shaddai predated in before the Masoretic. The Septuagint seems to never have Al Shaddai in that version of the Tanakh of the Old Testament. So anyway, so now we're going to go to Genesis 18 verse 2. Masoretic text substitutes Yahuwah with Adonai. So this is what I was talking about before. This is the danger of Adonai too, because they don't just use it as a title. Sometimes they use it as a substitution. And this started, by the way, in the Talmud. Before the Talmud was written, the law of the elders was you could not speak the Father's name. The Father's name was, inutterable. You ever hear that in Christianity? The unutterable name, supposedly, you can't utter it. That's a rabbinical tradition. I don't think any Christian pastors realize that, but when they regurgitate that nonsense, they're holding to teachings of the rabbis. Nowhere in Scripture does it say it's unutterable. So anyway, but I don't think they even realize that they're doing that, though, to be honest. So let me see here. So we're gonna
I
go.
never knew that they said that.
Yeah, I've heard pastors say that. I forget which ones. A lot of the mainstream ones hold to that tradition. They say the inutterable name. Let me see here. So it says, he lifted up his eyes and beheld, lo, 3 men stood before him, having seen him, ran to meet him from the door tent and did obeisance to the ground. And he said, O Yahuwah, if indeed I have found favor in your sight, pass not by your servant. Now, obviously, we know it's supposed to be Yahuwah here. Most people that have done translations have literally ignored the Masoretic text here and have put in Yahuwah anyway. Like, I'll give you an example. The Scriptures 1998, 2009, they don't put Adonai there in verse 3. They put Yahuwah in there. Restored Name King James does the same thing, completely ignores the Masoretic text. So, and I'll just show you guys what I mean here, because you're saying, well, Doug, it just looks like lowercase letter. Hold on, I'm going to show you what I mean. It depends on the translator whether they're going to honor putting it in all caps or not. So one thing I do like about the Apostolic Bible Polyglot with the Strongs is they do show you where Yahuwah's name is supposed to be. Okay. That's funny. That time they don't. So again, that time they don't. But obviously, since Kurios is there, we know that Yahuwah is supposed to be there. In the Greek, that's Kurios. So it should say, "Oh Yahuwah." And most Restored Name translators understand that. I mean, you go to verse 3, almost every Restored Name translator. And Yahuwah, if now. I mean, almost every Restored translator understands that. In verse 3 is supposed to be Yahuwah there, not Adonai. Problem is with the Masoretic, H136. So now they're substituting. They're not just using it as a title. They're substituting the Father's name. And this is actually, for those that don't know, if you go to the 10 Commandments chapter in Exodus 20, it literally says, do not bring my name to nothing. Like where you see in your English Bibles, do not bring his name taken in vain. Vain is like a really bad English translation for that. That's why I am a fan for certain verses in the Hallelu scriptures or ISR, because they do translate that Hebrew word correctly. It means to bring it to nothing, to make it useless. When you're rendering the Father's name as just Master or Lord or Baal, because practically Lord in Hebrew is Baal, okay? You're bringing it to nothing. If you render it as Adonai, you're bringing it to nothing. So these rabbis would think, oh, well, let's put Adonai here, and let's put some pen strokes here to make people vocalize Adonai instead of the Father's name. By doing that, you're breaking one of the 10 Commandments. So the rabbis supposedly claim that they were upholding the Torah by not letting the goyim that are not deserving to call on the Father's name. They would think that somehow is protecting the Father's name when it's actually bringing it useless or nothing. And as you can see here, I don't think we have to be redundant here, but when you look at all these other bullet points, verse 27 of the same chapter, verse 30 of the same chapter, verse 31 of the same chapter, 32, all of these instances, they do the same thing. So you have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 added times his name was substituted. So I don't know if you ever see memes online on Facebook that say the Father's name has been substituted 6,800 times. That's according to the Masoretic. According to the Septuagint, if you add all the times the Masoretic inserts Adonai in there instead of Yahuwah, technically the Masoretic has actually added to that, and it's probably more like 7 or 8,000 probably. I have no idea the exact number, but the fact that just in one chapter it's 6 or 7 different times, you would have to add to that 6,800 something number. So yeah, there's no way to know how accurate that number is. It's probably a little bit more than that in my opinion. Genesis 19 verse 18, the Masoretic text substitutes master with Adonai, and I'll show you guys what that's about in a second on the shared screen. So go ahead, Sister Sadia. I see you got your hand up, sis. Go ahead.
Just had a question. Which Bible uses the Septuagint? You know how all our Bibles are translated from the Masoretic?
Yeah, like 80% of our Bibles today are. You have what's called the Greek Orthodox Bibles. They use if you have any like Egyptian Coptic friends, they might have a Septuagint Old Testament Bible. Mainly the Orthodox, the old school Orthodox churches were like the only two churches that held on to the Septuagint in their tradition. Every other Christian church followed the Protestant Reformation, and they never looked back. I think the Vulgate with the Catholic Bibles, they're partial Septuagint. They're not fully Septuagint, but what I have looked into and researched into is St. Jerome, when he made the Vulgate Bible, he started using the Septuagint, but then halfway through he switched, unfortunately. I know that the book of Psalms fully in Catholic Bibles should be Septuagint based. If they're using the Vulgate, it should be Septuagint based. It seems certain prophets are Septuagint based in the Catholic Bibles. I was just looking the other day, Obadiah, the book of Obadiah seems to be based on the Septuagint, even in modern Catholic Bibles, like the Catholic Public Domain version. So yeah, there's very few Bibles today that use the Septuagint. That's why most of us unfortunately have to buy a Septuagint of itself with the Bibles we already have, because no one wants to trust in the Septuagint for their quote unquote what they want to call the canon of their Old Testament. And I think a lot of it has to do with bias. It has to do with the fact they trusted Judaism for so long for the Old Testament. They trusted, the rabbinical traditions, So yeah, hopefully that answers the question. But if you, there's tons of Greek Orthodox study Bibles on Amazon. If you can get past all the stupid Catholic imagery and Orthodox imagery, there's tons of there's even one called the Greek Orthodox Study Bible that uses a New King James New Testament, Septuagint Old Testament. You just got to kind of like ignore the stupid imagery, like the stupid paintings, all the Catholic paintings and all that. But yeah, there are Bibles out there today that do use the Septuagint in their. It's very few, and mainly it's due to a bias against the Greek. I don't know what it is. I don't know what happened with this movement, but I've noticed since I've crossed over, I tell brothers and sisters in assembly all the time, I don't know what's going on, but there's like this demon against like everything's wrong with the Greeks. The Greeks are evil. They're everything they do is evil. And it's like there's almost like what's the word I'm looking for, Mom? Like almost like a restraint. They don't want to even, some people don't even want to look into this stuff because it's written in Greek. Because
It's like a prejudice.
It's a prejudice.
Ethnic prejudice.
It's an ethnic prejudice. It's not realizing that Hebrew scribes translated their own scripture, their own Paleo-Hebrew Old Testament into Koine Greek. So it was really Yahuwah's own people that did it. And I think there's a lot of misinformation about the history of the Septuagint. That's why people don't trust in it. That's why the evangelical church doesn't trust in it. They, unless you got a Bible that at least consults with it, it's mainly 100% based on the Masoretic, like at least I'll give credit where credit is due. The NIV at least tries. They at least try somewhat to give to use the Septuagint when a verse is really out of whack. Same thing with the NLT, the New Living Translation. They do that a lot, especially when there's errors in the Masoretic that you can see that even it disagrees with the Dead Sea Scrolls version of the Old Testament. So a lot of the times the ESV, like the three main modern Bibles out there that at least quote unquote consent with the Septuagint, they might not base their whole translation off of it, but they at least consult with the Septuagint, like the ESV, NLT, NIV. I think ISV is another one, the International Standard Version. And some of them actually really consult with them. I noticed the Catholic Bibles do that a lot too. Like I said, I think it also has to do with how much of the Vulgate is Septuagint based, because if all the prophets are Septuagint based, then technically the Vulgate overall is a better Bible than most evangelical Bibles. As far as comparing the book of Psalms in a Catholic Bible versus a Protestant Bible, the Catholic Bible is going to be a lot better. And we'll see later on as we get to the second study. Before we end today, we're going to get into a study that shows how the Masoretic text omitted 12 introductions to the book of Psalms. And there's also translations out there that completely disregard even what the Masoretic Hebrew has and omits like 116 verses to the book of Psalms. Even from the Masoretic, there's supposed to be all these introductions that certain minority of translations don't like to include. That's why I'm kind of starting to go away from recommending restored name Bibles, unfortunately, is because they're not being honest and they're giving people Bibles that are missing 116 verses from the book of Psalms. Because I was just doing a test the other day. I had a NLT King James Parallel Bible, the same one that Sabita has, and all those 116 verses in Psalms that ISR doesn't have, the NLT has in their introductions, because there's supposed to be introductions to almost every chapter in Psalms. And if you add them all up that the ISR takes out, that's like 116 verses practically. So that's I'm starting to get to the point, if I don't know if I even want to recommend a messianic translation, unfortunately, to anyone, especially a new believer that doesn't know about this. But anyway, that's just my personal preference. But anyway, so we're at Genesis 19. Let's see, we already talked about all these omissions or substitutions here. We're at Genesis 19 verse 18, and again, they're substituting Adonai, and they're substituting master with Adonai. So I'm going to show you guys what I mean by this. Genesis 19:18. Genesis 19:18. Okay, so it says here, and Lot said to them, I pray, master. So obviously he's calling, these angels his masters or master. So he might be just talking to one of them in that context. But the problem with the Masoretic is what they have, the word they have here for Lord or lords is Adonai in the Hebrew. So again, they're, and again, I've had conversations with brothers and sisters saying, well, what word would be master in Hebrew? I'm like, I don't know, but I doubt Adonai was the original word for master in Hebrew. So something happened.
Now that's a lowercase L, right?
Yeah, whenever you have a lowercase L, usually it's Adonai in the Hebrew text.
Oh, I thought it was the other way around.
Nah, all caps Lord is YHUH, all caps.
Okay.
So
okay,
it would
right,
would be capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, and it says that in the preface. It says that right in the preface. The problem with our Lexham is they're not going by that traditional rule. They're just leaving it in small capitals. So that kind of confuses people. But if some other translations do actually put even for the Septuagint, all caps Lord, to let you know that's Yahuwah. So in that case, obviously with the context, he's talking to angels. So that's
Right.
master there.
Right.
So
And it's plural too. right?
yeah, masters. Yeah, he's talking to the two angels there a lot.
Right.
Here, what's interesting in verse, let's see where we're at, 22 to 23 of chapter 19. Masoretic text has Zuar and Septuagint has Segor. So we have two different names for two different places. It's very possible that just could be the Greek translation of it, but it seems a little too different in phonetics. That's a little too different phonetically to be the same word. So I've noticed that sometimes the Greek will differ from the Hebrew in what place they're at. But anyway, Genesis 19, verse 20, Masoretic text omits because of you. Now we're going to see how that's important here. We're going to go to the shared screen here, the shared screen, and go to, I think that's an old hand, if I'm not mistaken. So let me see here. So we're going to go and let me put my light on. I hate it when it gets dark and it does that. Yeah, I was really trying to save electricity today, but
Oh, when the sun's
Yeah.
getting ready to go down before long, you're not.
Yeah. yeah. All right, so Genesis 19:18. So we're going to look at that real quick. Genesis 19:18. Okay, I mean, actually, I think it's 19 verse 20.
Mhm.
Let me just double check because I might have cited it wrong. Yes, it's verse 20. Behold, this city is near for me to escape there, which is a small one, and there shall I be preserved. Is it not little? And my soul shall live because of you. Well, that's a pretty big difference. Because Lot is actually saying here, like, listen, like, I know it's because of you that I'm going to be saved. So that, because of you shows who is given credit to for that deliverance. You know what I'm saying? So in a way, it does matter that it should be there. The Masoretic leaves that out because of you in Genesis 19, verse 20. I don't understand that. But anyway, Genesis 19, verse 29, Masoretic text has he, Septuagint has Yahuwah. So a little bit more specific. This is preference here. And I do prefer the Septuagint for verse 29 there in chapter 19. It's being a little bit more specific, especially if you're not reading the whole chapter, you can be like, who's the he being talked about? It's always better to have Yahuwah's name there because then you know who the he is that's being referenced. So let me see here. Let me go to the other page here. So what is that, verse 29? Okay. So, all righty then. So, it was then when Elohim destroyed the cities of the valley, Elohim remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow when he overthrew the cities in which Lot had lived. Yeah, it doesn't make much of a difference when you read the whole verse. But half of the day, I hate to say it, in this modern day and age, we lack reading comprehension skills. So most of us will read the end of a verse and be like, who's the he? So in a way, I'm just saying, I'm not trying
No,
to be,
it's true.
I'm not trying to be mean, but in this modern millennial generation, who's the he? We'll probably read like one sentence out of the whole verse. So in that aspect, the Septuagint is just a little bit more specific as kurios there. So when Yahuwah overthrew those cities in which Lot dwelt. Now, the only reason I could see why they would want to change this is I know there's a Jewish tradition that supposedly Yahuwah is not the one that overthrew the cities, and that because there's like this weird Jewish rabbinical mindset that, oh, he can't leave his throne. He can't go to earth. No, he always has to be on his throne.
So they limit him.
And they limit him. They put him in a box. And so whenever something even accredits Yahuwah in scripture, it means that his angels did it. You know what I'm saying? And we see that in this messianic. in this
character.
messianic movement. You see that in this messianic movement. So like when I try to witness to people about the oneness and I tell them about the messenger, this person called the messenger of Yahuwah, they're like, oh no, that's just an agent of his. That's the problem. You're limiting him. That's the problem.
That is the problem.
That's the problem. I'm not trying to be preachy here, but I'm just saying
No, it's a big
that
problem.
that's the you're limiting him. You're putting him in a box like you know. And I'm pretty sure people think the same thing of Exodus 12, that only the destroyer angel wiped out the firstborn of Egypt, even though it says Yahuwah did it as well. Go ahead, brother Joshua. Shalom.
Joshua.
Shalom, shalom. Well then we must have some other kind of ruach in us if he can't leave his throne, or his ruach must not be him, must be some other person.
Yeah. But I remember talking to a brother about this a while back. And he was like, oh, he never leaves his throne. He can't leave his throne. And he was, of the Israelite faith. And I was asking, I was like, okay, so where is that in scripture that limits him to always has to be in heaven on his throne? Or that somehow he can't have a version of himself in heaven at the same time sitting on the throne while he takes the flesh of a baby.
Terrible.
Why are we limiting him? Like, and that's the whole oneness thing. The people that can't accept the oneness are people that want to put Yahuwah in a box and don't want to understand that, there's even something in science. What is it called? Mitosis? All it is mitosis. That's what happened in John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word was with Yahuwah, the Word was Yahuwah. The Word, came to earth, took on flesh. It's someone who's next to him, but is him at the same time. And we have a concept of that in science. It's called mitosis. You can duplicate yourself. I really don't see
Even
hard.
if we can't figure
I don't
out.
see that hard to comprehend when that's right in science, in mainstream science. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to keep ranting on that because I'll get my mom mad.
I'm already getting mad because
Right.
we can't figure it out logically. That means that he can't do whatever it is that he wants to do.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
man alive.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah.
That lacks your faith too. You're lacking faith if you think that he's just here and can only do this or can only do that.
Yep. Genesis 19:38. So we see here, there's another difference in terminology. This is not a big difference. Oh, my bad. I skipped something here. Verse 30, not 38. Zuar again for the Masoretic, Sagor for the Septuagint. So difference in geography a little bit there. I don't know. I could be wrong, and it could be just two different names for the same place. I've seen that where it happens, but it just seems a little too different to me. I don't know. That doesn't sound like the same place. Now we're going to go to verse 38 of Genesis 19. So we got for the Masoretic of Genesis 19:30, we have Ben Nami and Ammon. That definitely cannot be the same place. Okay, so Ammon, by the way, is the territory of the Ammonites. So the Septuagint would be liking to that they were in the land of Ammon rather than Ben Nami. Okay, so Genesis 20 verse 2, Masoretic text omits half of the verse. I think this is worth a second look. Let's look at Genesis 20 verse 2. I think, guys, we should at least get up to chapter 25 before we switch gears and go to that short study. I want to at least get to chapter 25 here today. So let's see here. So we're looking at what Genesis 20 verse 2. Genesis 20 verse 2. Okay. So here we go. Here's the ESV. By the way, ESV, like I said before, almost every modern Christian Bible is going to be like majorly Masoretic based. So that's why I'm using the ESV on this comparison here. And Abraham said of Sarah, his wife, she is my sister. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. Now, okay, so here's the difference in the Septuagint. Like I said, it has more in the verse here. So he's actually explaining to Abimelech in the Septuagint here in this verse why he told him she was his sister. I don't know why they would leave that out. She is my wife, lest at any time the men of the city should kill him for her sake. So Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. So basically what he's explaining, he's basically, it's almost like an explanation why he said she was his sister. Okay, so it's very weird that the Masoretic leaves that part of the conversation completely out. That just doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, here we go. We're going to go to verse 4 of chapter 20 as well. We're going to go to Masoretic text substituting Yahuwah with Adonai again. So this is like the 8th time that this has happened so far in the book of Genesis. I'll show you what I mean here. So it's actually easier for me to show you on eSword here. Let me get the parallel going here. This is why I really like parallel Bibles, because you can start comparing stuff like this. Okay, so we're going to use the King James with the Strongs here, and ABP Plus, which is the LXX with the Strongs. So we're looking at Genesis 20, verse 8, I believe. Let me just double check here. Yeah, no, 20, verse 4, my bad, 20, verse 4. So Genesis 20, verse 4, side by side here, we're going to see here what I mean by they substituted Yahuwah with Adonai. So Abimelech touched not. Here we go. On the left side, right? King James with the Strong's Concordance. H136. Lowercase Lord. And we have Kurios on the other side. Now the question is this referring to a human here where it would be master, or is this referring to, who is he talking to? This is where it, so that's what I want to look at too, is what the context is of Genesis 20, verse 4. And Abimelech had not touched her, and he said, okay, so this would be Matt. No, this would be Yahuwah, because he's talking to Yahuwah, right? Yahuwah is coming to him in the dream. So Abimelech had not touched her and said, and he said, Yahuwah, will you destroy an ignorantly sinning and righteous nation? So yeah, this in context, the Kurios here, even though it's not capitalized, it should be capitalized. I don't know why the ABP Plus didn't do that. When the context is he's talking to Yahuwah in a dream. I don't know. That's a stupid translator error. Either way, I can see from the context that the Kurios in this verse is referring to the Tetragrammaton, the YHUH. So in the Masoretic, in the Hebrew, it has the word Adonai. And so again, it's substituting Yahuwah's name. Now let's see here. So in Genesis 21, now we're going to go to 21 here, verse 2. The Septuagint has Yahuwah and the Masoretic has Elohim. So in your Masoretic Old Testaments in that verse, in English, it would have God, okay? So instead of the Lord. So that's the difference. That's how I know that there's a difference there, because the English God is like a substitution for Elohim. It's a title. So Yahuwah is substituted usually in English by the Lord. So this is how I can tell it's different, because in our Lexham, it would definitely show differently. So in the Greek, at least, it shows that Yahuwah is supposed to be there in the verse. So for whatever reason, this rabbinical tradition of substituting his name with a title, again, Exodus chapter 20 says, do not bring his name to nothing. So should we really be replacing his name with a title that is even used for angels? I don't think so. That's why I remember sister asking me one time, he's like, do you pray to them and call them Elohim? I'm like, no, because it's not a name. It's a title. It means deity. That's all it means. It means
Right,
mighty
right,
one.
right, right.
But even I'll give you guys the example. You know Muslims, right? Islam, the religion of Islam. Okay, when they call him Allah, you know what they're doing? They're literally whatever deity
Yeah.
they're worshiping, because Allah is Arabic for Elohim. They're literally just calling him deity or mighty one. Whatever deity they're worshiping,
Yeah.
they're
yeah.
bringing his name to not even.
Right, right, right.
Even that deity, they're bringing that deity's name to nothing by doing that, because Allah Arabic it's just the Arabic form of Elohim or of the Aramaic Allah. There's really no difference. So they're using a title for the God they worship. They're not, anyway. So either way you look at it, you're bringing his name to nothing. It's not his name. Exodus chapter 3 verse 15 actually tells us forever his name is Yahuwah. That's his name. Anyway, so Genesis 21 verse 6, LXX has Yahuwah, Masoretic text has Elohim. So again, I think we already talked about that. Yeah, my bad. I already talked about 21 verse 6. We're at Genesis 22 verse 2. Now, what's interesting here is they might be trying to cover up something or putting some rabbinic spin on here. The Masoretic text, usually, depending on your translation, it might say, your only son, you have not withheld your only son from me. Problem is he's not his only son.
Yeah, it's true.
And I get it in the Hebrew culture, he's the firstborn. He's not the physical firstborn, but I get it. I get it. But in this context, really doesn't make much sense to call him his only son.
Yeah.
When way, way before this point, Ishmael was born before Isaac.
Oh, yeah.
So this kind of doesn't, on a linguistic sense, even doesn't make any sense. The Septuagint instead says the beloved one, your son, the beloved one.
That makes much
Now,
sense.
what's interesting here, if you go to the New Testament, I find this very cool and interesting. Yahusha is called that multiple times in the New Testament. And even in extra biblical first century messianic literature, he's known as the beloved. He's always known as the beloved. So whether or not that literature is scriptural, whether it's inspired, that's a whole nother ballgame. But the fact is that historically, that title, the beloved one, is always exclusive to this coming Messiah. It's so the Septuagint even shows stronger that Isaac was a type of Yahusha, a type of Messiah. By the Greek Septuagint calling him the beloved one. That's hinting more, and then possibly this is why they changed it in the Masoretic text. They're like, oh, let's change a little word here, so they don't see Yahusha. And I might have to add this to the other document, Brother Joshua, you were having me type up at one point for a shirt you wanted to make. So I might have to add this, actually to the two other documents. One about the salvational, how it can become a salvational issue with the Masoretic. And also, what's the other one? Oh yeah, conspiracy, that document that I'm typing up right now, I'm not finished yet. Conspiracy to remove Yahusha from the Messianic prophecies. So we got, and again, we see this again in Genesis 22:12. Again, the difference where the Masoretic says your only son, Septuagint says your beloved son. Again, the beloved is a exclusive title to Yahusha. Actually, in extra biblical literature, it's almost as exclusive to Yahusha as the Son of Man title. I'll put it that way. That's how important that the beloved title is. It is a very, very, very distinct title for the coming Messiah. So it's very intent why the Septuagint translators use this when translating the Paleo Hebrew Tanakh of their day, Old Testament of their day, into Koine Greek. They did this on purpose because they understood that original word in Hebrew was referring to a specific type of son. I think even in the Greek of the New Testament, where it talks about only begotten, it talks about special kind, only of that kind type of ben or son. So, because Yahuwah has many sons, his angels are his sons. If we're going to be honest here, scripturally speaking, his angels are called his ben, his beni. Okay, he has many sons. But what makes Yahusha distinct is he is an exact replica of the original source. He is the exact replica of Yahuwah. He is identical in value, even in importance, in esteem. No one else can have the esteem that the Father has but the Son. Okay, go ahead, Sister Sadia.
Well, there's a song that says, Father Abraham had many sons, had Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so are you. As we go marching on, right on, Father Abraham, and it goes on through your whole body. So that, you guys remember that song?
Nah,
I do.
I think I'm too young. I'm too young.
I do.
Hey, let's
I
shake the
remember
dust off.
Yeah.
It's funny how you would say that because, I was writing the John 3:16, and I was like, am I doing this right? Am I saying this? For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. And I thought, should I run this through Doug really quick to say, because on John 3:16, that's what it says, his only begotten son. So I'm thinking, did the Masoretics, did anybody mess with this one? On John 3:16.
Yeah, I think the Masoretes try to change it. I know there's some modern Bibles that try to say brought forth or whatever, and they look at the Masoretic Hebrew trying to rework the New Testament using Masoretic Hebrew. That I'm really not a big fan of that. That's why I like the ISR and Holy Scriptures for certain things, but for other things, I'm not a big fan of when they start using Masoretic Hebrew to get definitions for Koine Greek. That you're not going to get equal, guys. First of all, Yiddish did not exist when Koine Greek was a language. Okay, first of all, so you can't be doing that. But I just wanted to show you guys, this is the verse I'm talking about, how Isaac connects to Yahusha here. Matthew 3:17. It says, this is from the Complete Apostles Bible. By the way, this is a Greek Orthodox Bible, just FYI. And behold, a voice came out of the heavens saying, this is my beloved son in whom I have found delight. So we see here that there's a reason the Septuagint is using beloved. There's a reason they either Yahuwah's Ruach was in them and guided them to use that exact Greek equivalent for the Paleo Hebrew equivalent. Something happened there, because we see later on in the Brit Hadashah, this title is used a decent bit, and there is apocryphal literature that calls him the beloved. There's one book out there that calls him the beloved like 20 times in that book. So they're in their own literature, this was a very important title for the Messiah. The coming Messiah was to be the beloved of the Father. You even see that when he talks about his suffering servant. He calls him his beloved. He calls him his chosen one. You see that a lot. So this, I think it was very intent, but to answer your question, I would definitely say the Masoretes were trying to change it. When you look at even, I think it's in Proverbs 8, when it's talking about the person known as wisdom. In the Masoretic, they try to say brought forth. Today I brought you forth instead of I begotten you, which I'm not a big fan of brought forth. Brought forth makes it generalized. He could bring forth an angel into human flesh. He can bring forth any celestial being into a human flesh. Angels take human flesh. What's the difference between Yahusha and a regular angel? That's like little word changes like that make a difference, in my opinion. Because begotten of something means you're every bit the substance of the original. That's the difference. So, like, for example, if I beget a son, my son is going to be my spitting image. he's not going to be a lesser being that is a son of mine, but not my begotten. So I have a distinction that I think begotten should have been kept there by all these translations. I don't understand why they decided to use brought forth instead of begotten, especially when you're trying to witness about the Basora. I would not be diluting stuff like that, in my opinion. So I'm trying to remember where exactly it talks about in Proverbs 8, but it says, today you have begotten me. Yahuwah made me the beginning of his ways for his works. It doesn't say that he was the first created being. Okay, I know some people misunderstand that verse there. He established me in the beginning before time was, before he made the earth, even before he made the depths, before the fountains of water came forth, before the mountains were settled, before all hills. He begets me. He begot me. So right there. So we see here that certain terms in the Septuagint, Greek words were used for a particular purpose. Because later on in John uses that same word. He says he's the only begotten of the Father. Only begotten. So there is no other begotten Ben. There is no other begotten Son. Angels are not begotten. They are creations of his, but they're not begotten. They're not every bit the substance equal to the Father. You know what I'm saying? So there is a difference. There's a distinct. Now, Judaism doesn't want you to believe that. They don't even want you to believe he has a son, which I don't know how you get around the whole angel thing in Genesis 6:4. Then I don't know how you get around Job 1:6, Job 2:1, all these verses that call messengers his sons. I don't know what you do with that. If you're a rabbi, I guess that you just ignore those verses because clearly he has multiple sons. So anyway, but yeah. Let me see here. Genesis 22 verse 13, Masoretic text omits Sabbat, or it's actually like it's almost like a phonetic root word for Sabbath here, it seems like, because it's translated in the Greek into English as sabek, but if you look at the etymology of it, it's actually Shabbat. So I find that interesting. In Genesis 22:13, that's completely omitted that word, which is pretty important because that's where we get the word Sabbath from. Let me see what the context of this is. Abraham lifted up his eyes and behold, lo, a ram caught by his horns in the plant of Sabek or Sabbat. Interesting. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up on a whole burnt offering in the place of Isaac his son. Now, I would not be surprised if they took this out being so petty, because Yahushua himself says he is the master of the Shabbat. So them not being stupid, knowing who it's really being talked about in Genesis 22:13 as the messenger of Yahuwah and all that, I wouldn't be surprised if these Masoretes were like, oh yeah, let's take out plant of Sabek. Let's just take that out, because that allegorically talks about the Sabbath in some way or form. No, he's not the master of the Sabbath. I wouldn't be surprised. These guys researching what these scribes were all about, they're petty. They're really, really petty. So I would not be surprised. They were very hateful towards Yahushua. If you research it for yourself, the Masoretic scribes, they did not believe he was the Messiah. The whole point of making the Masoretic text was to was to rework the Old Testament, so-called fix errors in the Septuagint. Go ahead. I think Jessica had her hand up first. Go ahead, Jessica.
I just want to know what part of verse 13 what has the bot, because it doesn't have it at all in mine. So I want to put it in.
It's from the Septuagint. Pretty much every version of the Septuagint I'm looking here has it. Yeah, it's right after by his horns in a plant of Sabek. So it's like right here. It's in between horns and so yeah, it's right in the middle of the verse practically. I don't
After its horns?
Yeah, by his horns in a plant of Sebek. So the
Mhm.
plant is actually being named after Sabbath or Sabbath. I think the reason why, or I guess, Mom, what would it say in the NIV or the ESV? It wouldn't say plant. It would say what, bushes, or what it would say,
What,
thorns,
Where
or
are we looking?
which I find interesting too, because Yahusha had a crown of thorns. And that whole verse is all about him. Let's see here. Genesis 22:13, Mom.
Okay.
Because I'm trying to see what they use. I know they probably use bush or something else.
All right.
Or thicket. That's what it
And
is.
Abraham
thicket.
lifted up
Thicket.
his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram caught in a thicket by his horns.
Yeah, so what they're missing in that verse is of Sebek, right after thicket.
Oh, okay.
Right after thicket, it's supposed to say of Sebek or of Sabbat. And the reason I know it's actually supposed to be Shabbat, and that it's just spelled weirdly. So if I go into the ABP with the Strongs, see thicket by plant. Oh, I see what happens. They mistranslate Sabaton as thicket. What the? Jeez. I don't know how they get thicket out of the Greek word for Sabbath. Or day. I know some people want to say it can mean first of the weeks. That's whatever, but it doesn't mean thicket.
Thicket would be
So
like caught in a
it's-
bush. Caught in
Yeah,
a-
what it's supposed to say is, he saw and behold one of the rams being held in a plant. That's where thicket's supposed to be,
Mhm.
of a Sabaton. That's what it actually says in the literal Greek. Oh yeah. Face palm, sister. Jeez, translators, we don't need your help, man. Just translate it straight into English what it says. Okay, jeez, gosh. So what's interesting too, though, is we know that who is the plant? Who is implanted by Messiah? We are the olive tree. We are the, so you see the whole, just the change of a word totally loses its value, because you don't even see that the whole verse is about Messiah, and that he is allegorized as the ram or the lamb
Yeah.
that's being in place of Isaac. John 3:6, John 3:16. So literally, the ram is Yahusha allegorically, and the plant would be us. We're the vineyard, we're the plant, we're the olive tree, Israel. Okay, and the thicket by the horns. Now, interestingly enough, you think about it, horns or thorns. Who had a crown of thorns?
Mhm.
Like, this whole verse is talking about him. And yet in Judaism, they miss it. It's literally talking about him. Go ahead, Sister Sadia.
Well, that even goes with when Yahushua died, they made a thorn of crowns around his head. And is the Sabbath for us. And it's funny, this word has been removed. It's so symbolic because he provides.
Hallelujah. Yeah, I'm writing this down on my notebook here so I don't forget this. So Sabaton in the ABP is substituted, mistranslated as thicket. Man, that guy really messed up on that one. I mean, he usually doesn't mess up like that from the Greek, but man, he screwed up. That's a really bad mistranslation. Gosh. All right, so moving on. So basically, you can get from this whole verse that it's talking about Yahusha. Yahusha is allegorized as the ram. He's the master of the Sabbath, plant of the Sabbath. We are his plant. We are implanted in his law, his Sabbath. I mean, it's all there. And he's instead of humankind. Isaac would represent us, obviously, in our stead. He died for us. So that whole verse is about him there. So Masoretic text adds Yireh here. Now, this is something interesting I've been looking into. The Septuagint never calls him Yah Yireh. Like, that title Yireh is never used. So I would like to find out where exactly that came from, because I think it only occurs like once or twice in the whole Old Testament. So I'm not against it by any means, but I just wonder when exactly it got added to the text, because I have not seen it in any earlier versions of Genesis. So I would really like to figure out where they're getting that idea of, the title Yireh, and what is Yireh supposed to mean? He who provides. Right, Mom? It means
I guess.
he
I
will
mean, I'm not
provide, or
sure.
he who provides.
Yeah,
So there's nothing wrong with the title, you're right, but I'm just saying there's like nowhere, I don't think I've seen it in the Targums or the Samaritan Pentateuch or nothing. So I'm kind of wondering where they're getting that from. I think I got the wrong verse here. I think it's 22. And it should be chapter 22, 14, I think. 22, 14. So that's a strange one there. Yeah. Abraham called the name of that place Yahuwah has seen, that they might say today, in the mountain Yahuwah was seen. Maybe that's the Yireh, but that would be a lot different. That's got to be another title. Or maybe Yireh did not mean provide, it meant that he was seen. I could see them trying to change this and just, bear with me, explain why I think they would have changed it. Because, mind you, the Father himself is not mentioned in this chapter, really, talking to Abraham. Who's talking to Abraham this whole chapter? The Son. So for them to change the title that's being given to Yahuwah, the name of the place, they're taken away from the fact that the messenger of Yahuwah that talked to Abraham, that told him to stop, don't put your hand on the son, Isaac, the Septuagint version of verse 14 is likening that messenger to Yahuwah himself. So for them to change in the mountain Yahuwah is seen to he will provide, it takes that out. So there's probably some weird doctrine in the rabbinical circles that the messenger of Yahuwah was just an agent of Yahuwah. I'm pretty sure. They don't obviously they don't believe in Yahushua as the Messiah. So they're not going to believe he's a version of the Father that we can handle sent to earth. I doubt they would believe that. So it makes perfect sense why they changed this here. So in the Septuagint it says the name of the place was called Yahuwah has seen, that they might say today, in the mountain Yahuwah was seen, meaning Abraham saw Yahuwah. And then we see later on in scripture it says, no man has saw him face to face. So who did Abraham see? That's being called Yahuwah. Yeah, I could see why they wanted to change that. I could see why. Go ahead, Sister Sadia. I forgot you had your hand up. Oh, my bad. That might be.
I'm sorry, I forgot to lower it.
It's okay. Let's see. Again, we have the difference here. Beloved son, verse 16. Your only son. See here. Masoretic text substitutes king with Adonai. Now, this is where we know for a fact Adonai does not belong in this verse. The Greek word there, Basilius, is the same exact Greek word in the book of Revelations when it talks about the 10 kings and all that. Okay, so that same Greek word is used in the Septuagint. So regardless, Basilius does not mean Adonai, it means king. So the fact that they have Adonai there instead of the Hebrew word for king, by the way, would be Melech or Malak. I forget how it's pronounced exactly. But it seems like the Masoretes substituted what should have been there was Melech and substituted with Adonai for whatever reason. So that definitely is a corruption in the text there. It should say king, not master or lord. It should say king. Even though a king is a master or lord, the point is the word there is king. So there is an actual Hebrew word for king that's not Adonai. So obviously Adonai was substituted there for the Hebrew word melech or malak. That's why sometimes you'll see the Jewish people singing Hashem Melech, because Melech is king. So they're saying the name is king and all that. So yeah.
How
Anyway.
did Hashem get started?
Because in the rabbinical Talmudic period, like 1st to 3rd century AD, like 100 to 300 AD, they started having the synagogues a lot, the synagogue system, and it was another way for them to not pronounce the name. Because in a way, if you say the name, you're not uttering the inutterable name. It's too holy to pronounce, that whole stupid Jewish tradition. That is some nonsense. But anyway, so, and Christianity, unfortunately, unbeknownst to them, they've inherited that rabbinical tradition. Because any pastor that says, oh, it's an unutterable name, you're doing the same thing that the rabbis do by saying that. And maybe that's why these translators think that keeping it as Lord and God is somehow honoring him, because they're deceived by these rabbinical stupid traditions that Yahusha hated. By the way, he hated. He literally said to the Pharisees, like, well, do you put aside my father's law for your tradition? I would add stupid there, but for your idiotic traditions. You defy the Torah just for your stupid little traditions, your little Talmud. But anyway, Genesis 23 verse 11 again, Adonai. Genesis 23 verse 15, Adonai has the small lowercase. Lord there would have like the small uppercase L, the rest lowercase for Lord. That's usually Adonai there. Okay. Genesis 24 verse 7, Masoretic text omits and the Elohim of the earth. We're going to see how that's important here. I think we're going to turn to that there. So, all right. So we're going to look at that real quick. And I think we will end at 25. Once we get through the cross references for 25, we're going to be done with this study for the night. And then we'll just have that short little study afterwards. So let me see here. Which one we got here? We got verse 7. Okay, so Genesis 24, verse 7. Okay. 24, verse 7. Yeah. And let's see here. Yahuwah Elohim of heaven and the Elohim of the earth. So basically this whole statement here is left out of the Masoretic. I don't know, there could be some weird rabbinical thing here. Like I said, they held on to this weird belief system that Yahuwah can't be on the earth and all that. So wouldn't be surprised why they left that out, because that's showing that he's the Elohim of heaven and earth.
That's right.
And that would this would kind of mess up with their rabbinical tradition, the fact that the Septuagint has the Elohim of the earth and of heaven. So that would mean that, if he's possessor of both, he would be leaving his throne sometimes. And in Jewish tradition, they don't believe that. They believe that he's held by a non-existent law you'll never find in your Bible, that he can't leave his throne.
It's
So,
sad. Not only don't they have the son, but they don't even have the father.
No, because they
Because
have
they
a
don't
whole
have
other
his
God.
character. They don't know
It's a
him.
whole nother God. It's a God that somehow is powerless to leave his throne. It's a God that doesn't want you to say his name. It's a God that wants traditions over his own word. I mean, the whole character. There's a whole character problem.
That could be a lot of the reason why so many quote unquote Jewish people give up on their faith. A lot of them do.
Yeah.
A lot of them go to atheism, to be honest with you. I mean, as far as the records we have.
I believe, like Zach says, our brother Zachary Bauer says, when you change his word, there's a curse to that.
Sure there is.
When you change his character, you misportray him.
That's
you
right.
try to teach from his word, but you really don't teach his word,
Mhm.
there's a curse to that.
Absolutely.
And that's why a lot of these
sad. Oh,
children are
goodness.
raised up either in Christianity or Judaism, and a lot of the times they depart from what they've been raised in and go to agnosticism or atheism.
Mhm.
And because it's not found in truth, there's no what is the word I'm looking for? It's not found on the rock. It's not found on the foundations.
That's
It's
right.
built on sand. Either way you look at it, either
Mhm.
belief system, both belief systems are built on sand. But anyway, Genesis 24:18, Masoretic text omits until he ceased. We're gonna look at that. And let's see here. So Masoretic text omits until he ceased. So we're going to look at Genesis 24:18, I believe. All right. So I believe Brother Josh joined us. All right. So let's see here. We're almost at verse 18 here. Here we go. So she said, "Drink, my master," and she quickly let down her jar upon the hand and gave him a drink. So the Septuagint also says here, till he ceased drinking. So at least the Septuagint knows, like, kind of gives you the context. Okay, she's giving him to drink out of the well until he was full, basically. But the Masoretic leaves that out. So I don't know. I guess you're supposed to be left to understand that on your own there. But anyway, let's see here. Let's move on to the next one here. Genesis 24:26. Masoretic text lacks being well pleased. Again, this is a weird instance here where a key phrase is omitted out of the verse. Okay, so that was Genesis 24:26. All right, so yeah, here we go. So the servant Baruch's Elohim. The man bowed his head and worshipped Yahuwah versus the LXX saying, and the man being well pleased worshiped Yahuwah. Just ignore it. He only does it because it's annoying you.
Not annoying me any more than any other day.
So on to the next one here. We have Genesis 24:27. Masoretic text lacks prosperously. Okay. Genesis 24:44. Masoretic text lacks, and hereby shall I know that you have worked mercy with my master Abram. Now that's important because this is talking about the story of Isaac, and Isaac sent basically in allegorical sense, he sent a servant who is like representing the best man, who is, getting the bride for Isaac. Okay. Genesis 24:45, Masoretic text lacks straightway. Genesis 24:49, Masoretic text lacks being well pleased again. Genesis 24:59, Masoretic text adds and her nurse. So here we go. Genesis 26:14, many tilled lands. Okay. Genesis 26:20. Masoretic text has strove here. And the Septuagint has lawlessness. Now, if I remember this correctly, I think this is where I'm trying to remember if Isaac and Laban, right? Is it or no, who would Jacob and Laban possibly, but Jacob and Laban, basically he's striving with Jacob's men. I mean with Laban's men. And so the Masoretic text there says in Genesis 26:20, they strove with one another. The Septuagint more indicates that Laban's men was not treating him well. It says lawlessness. So we're going to go there real quick because I think that's an important difference to show there in chapter 26. Let me go to the correct chapter. So chapter 26. 20. Chapter 26, verse 20. And the shepherds of Gerar strove with the shepherds of Isaac. Yep. Saying that the water was theirs, and they called the name of the well Injury, for they injured him. Now, and again, injured from the Bretons, I really don't like that. It should say lawlessness, not injury. So contended, in a way, it doesn't give the full meaning. It doesn't really give you who's in the wrong in that instance, which I like in the Septuagint. The actual Greek of the word for injury or injured is talking about iniquity. So it gives you more of an idea that the shepherds of Gerar were in the wrong against the shepherds of Isaac. So, yeah. So let me see here. Let's move on here to Genesis. I think we'll end with Genesis 26:25. Then we'll do the last little study we have for today. So Genesis 26:25, Masoretic text lacks the valley of Gerar. So that's very interesting there. So thank you everyone for joining us for this study. Please stay tuned. We are going to be doing another quick study right after this, but please stay tuned for the differences in the book of Genesis, part 3. We will be doing soon. This was part 2, and I really recommend, if you haven't fully seen this study, watch from the beginning when it's uploaded, fully uploaded on YouTube, and watch the part 1 so you get the full context of this study. But please stay tuned, everyone. We're going to take a very short intermission from our live session here. We're going to do a new live, and then we're going to do a very short, like 10-15 minute study when we get back on. So please stay tuned, everyone. We'll be right back. And to all of our brothers and sisters keeping the new moon today, Chag Semak, Rosh